All right, so today we're going to be diving into something pretty wild. We're talking about a plane crash, a mysterious island, secrets, conspiracies, the whole shebang.
It's going to be a deep dive into Lost. But don't worry, we're not asking you to binge all 6 seasons. We're going to unpack all the good stuff today right here.
Exactly. We've got all the need to know info right here in front of us. And, well, for anyone who hasn't seen Lost, which is entirely possible, it's been around a while, imagine this. Oceanic Flight 815.
Oh, Oceanic 815, quite a flight number to conjure with.
Right. Sydney to LA, right?
Mm-hmm.
It ends up crash landing on a, well, let's just say it's not your typical tropical paradise.
Not your average layover.
Not at all. It's much more than just a simple plane crash on a deserted island story, though. This
Right.
show, it really gets you thinking.
Right. Oh, absolutely. Lost takes this really gripping premise and it uses it to ask some really big questions about, well, about what it means to be human. We're talking free will versus destiny, the search for meaning, facing the consequences of our choices, things like that.
Yeah. It's kind of like the show holds up a mirror to all those, like, deep existential anxieties we have. Like, it forces you to confront them head on.
Exactly. It really gets under your skin. And one of the things that always struck me about Lost was its structure. I mean, we're not talking this straightforward narrative here, are we? We're talking flashbacks, flash forwards, and even flash sideways.
Yeah. It's like every episode throws you a curveball. Instead of just telling the story in a linear way, they hit you with these flashbacks to the characters' lives before the crash. So, like, we're learning about their backstories, their secrets, their biggest regrets, all while trying to figure out what the heck is going on the island in the present. It's genius, really.
It's incredibly clever. And it's not just for dramatic effect either. Those flashbacks, they're completely intertwined with the mysteries of the island. Take Jack, for example, the doctor.
Right. Dr. Jack Shepherd.
His flashbacks often show his strained relationship with his father, his need to always be the hero, to fix things. And this ties directly into his role as a leader on the island and his constant drive to try and, well, fix everything that's going wrong.
It makes you wonder, right? Like, were these people always meant to crash on this island? Were their pasts somehow connected to it all along? Or was it just a horrible twist of fate?
It's the central question, isn't it? Fate versus free will. And Lost wants you to really wrestle with that.
And that, my friends, is why this show had everyone glued to their screens. So, speaking of things that'll keep you glued to your screen, let's talk about the island itself. I mean, we're dealing with a tropical island, right? But this is Lost, so we've got polar bears.
Right. Talk about a curveball.
Seriously. And then there's that mysterious smoke monster, vanishing into thin air 1 minute, tossing people around the next. I gotta say, the writers didn't hold back on the weird stuff.
Well, it's more than just throwing in crazy elements for shock value. Each of those things, they're symbolic. They tie into the bigger picture, you know?
Okay, so, like, there's a method to the madness.
Exactly. Take the polar bear, for example. You wouldn't expect to find a polar bear on a tropical island, right? It throws you off balance.
Completely. Like, that just shouldn't be there.
And that's the point. It reflects how the survivors feel totally out of place, thrown into a situation that doesn't make any sense. Their reality's been completely disrupted.
I see. Okay, then what about the smoke monster? I mean, that thing still creeps me out. What's the deal with that?
Oh, the smoke monster. Now, that's a whole other conversation, probably one of the most debated parts of the entire show.
Oh, I bet. So, what's the interpretation then? What does it represent?
Well, it depends on who you ask, right? Some people think it's like a physical embodiment of the island's power. Like the island itself is alive, and that's its defense mechanism or something.
Okay, yeah, I can see that.
But then there's another camp that thinks it's more like a manifestation of the darkness inside the characters. You know, their fears, their guilt, all that stuff we try to bury deep down.
Like their inner demons, basically.
Exactly. Take Mr. Eco, for example. Here's a guy wrestling with some serious guilt, haunted by his past, and his encounters with the smoke monster. It's like they're forcing him to confront those demons head on.
It's like the island is putting them through these trials, huh? Making them face the things they'd rather avoid.
Right. And it's not just the natural elements they have to contend with either. Don't forget about the Dharma Initiative and the others.
Oh, man. Yeah, those groups definitely add another layer of woe to the whole thing. Remind me about the Dharma Initiative, though. What was their deal again?
So the Dharma Initiative, they were this big scientific research project with some pretty big ideas. Yeah. And maybe not all of them were so great. They were doing experiments on the island, trying to figure out its secrets, especially those numbers you mentioned earlier.
4, 8, 15, 16, 23, 42. Yeah, those numbers were everywhere. They were connected to the Dharma Initiative somehow, right?
big time.
Yeah.
The numbers were a huge part of their research, although it takes a while before the show really reveals how it all connects.
And then there were the others. They were kind of creepy, right? Like, they were already living on the island, but their motives are always kind of fuzzy.
Totally. They definitely brought the suspense, kept everyone guessing. They were menacing, for sure. But then there were these moments where you kind of felt for them, like they were protecting something, even if their methods were questionable.
It's like everyone on that island, survivors and the groups that were already there, they were all fighting for something. Like, they all had their own agenda, their own ideas of what was right and wrong. Makes you wonder who the good guys and bad guys really were.
And that's the brilliance of Lost, right? It doesn't give you easy answers, black and white, good versus evil. It's all about the gray areas, forcing you to think about the choices people make and why they make them.
It's kind of wild how Lost went beyond just like being a TV show. You know, it was this whole cultural phenomenon. People were obsessed with those Dharma Initiative numbers. Like, I remember reading about people using them for lottery tickets, hoping for some of that Hurley luck.
Oh, absolutely. Those numbers took on a life of their own. And that's just one example of how deeply invested people got in the show. It was more than just entertainment, you know? It sparked something in people.
Yeah, totally. Everyone was searching for answers on the island, off the island. It was like this collective mystery we were all trying to solve together. And, you know, when I think about it, Lost really changed television. Like, the way it told a story over multiple seasons with all those twists and turns, it paved the way for shows like Game of Thrones and Stranger Things, don't you think?
100%. It raised the bar, that's for sure. Lost embraced long-form storytelling, weaving together those intricate plots and characters over time. It kept viewers hooked, always wanting more. And those online forums, right?
Oh, man, don't even get me started on the forums. Theories everywhere. I spent hours on those.
Exactly. Lost tapped into the power of collective storytelling in a way that no show really had before. The writers were so good at dropping clues, playing with expectations. They weren't afraid to let the fans speculate, even admitted to using some fan theories in the show. It was brilliant.
So, okay, with all these mysteries, symbols, theories flying around, what was the takeaway? Did Lost ever give us concrete answers?
You know, I think that's the beauty of it, right? It wasn't about easy answers. It wasn't about tying everything up perfectly. It was about the journey, about the characters and how they grew. Even that ending with the flash sideways, it was about letting go, finding peace, even with unanswered questions.
And isn't that kind of like real life in a way? I mean, we don't always get the answers we want, do we? Sometimes it's about accepting that, about focusing on connections, on the journey itself.
Exactly. And if you're looking to, dive even deeper into Lost, I always recommend that documentary, Getting Lost.
Oh, yeah.
It gives you a look behind the curtain, how the show was made, its impact on television. It's fascinating stuff.
Definitely worth a watch. So we've talked plane crashes, polar bears, smoke monsters, fate versus free will. Lost might be over, but it's still got this hold, It makes you think. It reminds us that sometimes the biggest mysteries are the ones inside us, and that searching for meaning is just as important, maybe even more so, than actually finding the answers.
Well said. Which brings us to a final thought for our listeners. What if you were stranded on that mysterious island? What would you want to learn about yourself? What would you be willing to believe?